Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jordan Delacruz here with Mill Creek's very own Caped Crusader and my lifelong Rata Alada, Dan Lawler. What's up?
It's the worst Spanish I ever heard.
I think Penguin's been in between drug deals, has just been crushing Duolingos.
Right. He and I have that in common.
Today we're going to be discussing our general reactions and thoughts on The Batman. Then we'll round out the show by seeing if Matt Reeves understood the assignment as we fill out this movie's report card, grading The Batman on touch points that are key in the lore of The Dark Knight. Okay, so let's start here. I want to talk expectations before this movie came out.
Right.
So prior to the announcement of this movie, what was your kind of temperature on Batman, like as a character in movies?
Prior to the announcement of this movie, I was definitely willing to watch more, but ready to be a little bit done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think before this movie came out, there was like a little bit of talk about like a Ben Affleck Arkham Asylum movie a la The Raid. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that sounds dope as fuck.
Yeah, that sounded awesome.
But other than that, no, I mean, I was ready to kind of put it on ice for a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when this announcement came down, I was very excited. I'm a pretty long standing Matt Reeves stan.
Yeah.
So definitely excited.
The Zack Snyder Batman, I think, has some give and take. And I actually do like Ben Affleck as like Bruce Wayne.
Sure.
And then, you know, once you have the costume on, it's like, whatever. But it's just like that iteration of Batman got started with so much baggage.
Mm-hmm.
Like his opening movie was actually a sequel to Superman. And
right.
You know, it's like he didn't get a foundation to jump off on. So yeah. And I do remember them announcing that like Batfleck solo joint. And yeah, that concept of, I think they were kind of comparing it to that first Arkham video game, because that all takes place inside Arkham Asylum. And I mean, hey, if they still want to do that and Matt Reeves is helming it, like, let's do it.
Go ahead.
But yeah, agreed. Like, it was in a really weird spot where I wasn't really excited or clamoring for a new Batman movie, because just how, you know, they kind of soured me on Batman.
Right.
And really the key to this was Matt Reeves. As soon as he signed on to the project, that's when I got really excited. And for those who aren't familiar with his work, the last two things that he did were the last two Planet of the Apes movies, which were awesome.
Right. And then the two things before that were two movies that just should not have worked whatsoever, with Cloverfield and Let Me In. Like, Let Me In specifically, like, had everything working against it. And I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, really, really good. And then, Cloverfield. I mean, people say that it's kind of probably aged a little weird.
I'm sure.
And of course, that found footage thing has just been beaten to death. But I think he's really the one that perfected it on like this big cinematic level. So big Matt Reeves fans. So what were your expectations for this film, and what were the things when they announced it and when the details started coming out that you were most excited for?
From the beginning, it seemed like they were on like a full PR crusade, for lack of a better term, to like pitch this as like a noir film, right? Like a noir detective story that's going to be grounded and really more about crime than any like punching and kicking.
Yeah.
And that definitely excited me, just because it would explore like an avenue that hasn't really been explored much outside of like 20 minutes of a Christopher Nolan movie or 10 minutes of a Zack Snyder movie. Like, they don't do tons of detective work.
Yeah, Batman as a detective, which is like, I would say probably more like 70% of his persona in like the comics.
Right. I mean, it started as Detective Comics. And so, I mean, like, that's definitely something that I was excited to see. And then when they started announcing like the cast list, I think that like the expectations only shot up from there.
Yeah. Those were really the two things. It was like the new approach, Batman not just being a dude who's just fighting all these, like, really, like, was more about the villains, kind of, until, you know, Batman versus Superman. I don't know what we expected out of that, but like a lot of the times, like, a staple of Batman is just like getting excited for the villains, and then Batman's kind of Batman. And this new approach, as soon as they said it was going to be smaller, it was going to be more focused on the detective work, maybe take more inspiration from like noir stuff, which is like really heavy in the comics.
Right.
Then that's another thing that I was really, really excited for. And honestly, I don't think I've been this excited for a comic book movie. Once all the pieces came together and we knew how this was shaping up, I don't think I've been this excited for a comic movie since like probably Civil War.
Right.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So, keeping in mind the things that we were excited about, the things that our expectations for this movie, how did this movie deliver for you?
Oh, I thought it really delivered. You know, I thought I did, like we said earlier, I thought that like the David Fincher-esque, like, you know, detective stuff, because it's very like heavily, it feels like Zodiac. It feels like Seven in a lot of ways. And I think that's purposeful.
Yeah.
And that like really, really worked for me. I think across the board, the cast worked. I don't think that there was a single like performer that I was like, not really into it. There are characters and some scenes in the movie that didn't work for me. But the cast itself did a really great job.
Not even just like the main players too. There was like all these kind of tertiary kind of characters that were on the fringes,
right? That
were awesome.
Yep.
Like some of the cops were great. Some of the higher ups in the police department were awesome. There's actually two people that played cops that were from Chernobyl. Did you notice that?
Yes. Yeah. The guy with the weird voice.
Yeah. The like grumbly voice.
That was one thing I like spent like 3 minutes during his scene. Like, where do I know this dude from? And, so I was a little distracted during that part,
and Alex Ferns, who was the main miner the head miner in Chernobyl. You remember that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was the police commissioner.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. The guy that hates Batman.
I love it.
Yeah. And that's a guy who I'm like, I want to put stock in that guy.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah. I think he's got a good future ahead of him. Yeah. The cast, Pattinson as Batman. I think that was like a really bold, controversial choice.
I think so too.
I don't think Matt Reeves makes that choice without knowing the baggage that comes along with that.
Right. And without knowing the movie that he already wants to make. Because Robert Pattinson would have been a bad Batman for, I think, the Snyder movies, for the Nolan movies. He's very quiet. Like, I think that he doesn't speak much, honestly, in the movie.
Yes. Very, he acts with his body, and his face and his eyes. Yeah. And also, it's funny. I was, when they cast him, when we started seeing some of the promo come out about him, I was like, cool, we're getting a young Batman.
Right.
And I actually went and did the research. He's actually 3 years older than Bale was when
they started it.
In Batman Begins. Yeah. So he's an older Batman, but it still feels like a younger Batman, just the way they've kind of set him up.
He's an older Batman, but he feels like a younger Batman because we're older.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably it. Oh God. But yeah. And then the other, main players, Zoe Kravitz.
Excellent.
And
smoke show.
I was like, it's almost like too perfect. Like as soon as they announced her, I was just like, okay, that's gonna rule. As long as the writing is good, as long as the characterization is good. And it was like, I think this is the first time Catwoman has had depth beyond just the bullet points of Catwoman, like she's actually a really interesting character. I would say if like they announced a Catwoman movie with like that character, I'd be just as excited. Like,
I would be as well.
I really, really liked her characterization.
Let's go HBO Max.
Let's
Give me a TV show.
Paul Dano.
Excellent. He can go to levels of like unhinged that most actors can just only dream of.
Yeah.
Like he's doing this. He's doing a very interesting mixture of like, I don't know, his There Will Be Blood character.
The like shrieking screams.
Yeah.
The way he shrieks is so like, it's frightening and funny at the same time. Like you want to laugh at it, but you're also uncomfortable.
I definitely laughed a lot at what he was doing. Like his performance was really, really, it was good. It was a great performance, but there were parts where, and I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, that he would make me laugh just by way of speaking, I guess. You know what I mean? Like he's not saying anything funny, but the way that he is kind of enunciating and projecting his voice is funny to me. Yeah.
And I always get nervous, especially with Batman villains. I don't know what it is just about Batman villains. And I think it has a little bit to do with the bar that Heath Ledger set, where his performance was so unique and crazy and unhinged that I think people have tried to copy it so much ever since. And I think you can see that in like Leto's Joker, which is like, he is like spitting on the camera. There's no subtlety to it. He's just like trying to be so big, and it really just like doesn't work. And then we have Paul Dano, who's like very subtle. And so when he does reach those higher volumes, when he is shrieking, or when he does this weird thing where like at the beginning of a word, if it's like a vowel, he'll carry it like long. So he'll be like, exactly. He'll do this like weird, I love it. And there's a subtlety to it. But when he does turn it up, it's funny because we knew as soon as all the concept art of the Riddler came out that they were doing this kind of Zodiac inspired take on the Riddler. And a lot of people were wondering how campy will they get with this character, because the Riddler himself is extremely campy.
For sure.
And they're like, are we going to get the green tuxedo with the question marks? He's going to have a cane and a bowler hat. And he doesn't, but I think you can, like when he does hit those higher registers, especially in the kind of, conjugal visit scene. You can hear the Riddler. Like when he starts to like really unleash, you can start to hear
for sure.
Where the inspiration is coming from in that character. And I just thought he handled it really well. And him surviving the film and kind of teasing out a possible future. There is room that I think he could probably get a little campier, and he can kind of grow that character, which I'm excited for.
I mean, especially, like he does seem to engage with his environment in that scene where he is talking to, like the Joker. I believe he's, what is it listed on? Unseen Arkham prisoner, Barry Keoghan. So yeah, I think that especially if you put those two characters together, it would be, I think that you could see him getting a bit.
Maybe the Riddler gets hooked up with Joker's tailor.
Yeah. Then we get, although I loved the costume design for the Riddler.
It was really good.
That was very awesome.
Okay. So what were things that kind of surprised you? Unexpected things.
I think the thing that really surprised me most was the opening narration. And this is also a disappointment of mine, is that they didn't continue the narration. I was like,
it's like a bookend.
Yeah. I was like ready to roll when he opens up, like just reading his diary. Basically, you know what I mean?
Very Rorschach.
I think that it has like real, noir. Obviously that's like such a staple of the noir genre is the narrator. But it also,
and a lot of comic books,
exactly.
Too,
Especially, when we walked into the theater, they handed us an issue of like a reprint of Long Halloween, which is my favorite Batman comic book. And that book is just littered with narration. Like
it's
even
kind of
like
how to keep time.
Exactly. And even like within a conversation, like he's narrating his own thoughts about a conversation. So I thought that would, I don't want them to go that deep in the movie, but I would have loved to, cause I had there's no way I would have known, but I had no idea there was going to be a narration involved. And I would have loved if they kind of, not constantly, but used it sort of as a marker throughout the movie.
Almost like to bookend chapters of the movie, instead of having a title come up, it's like kind of an invisible chapter where we get like a little, just like a little diary entry.
Exactly.
But I really liked that aspect of it too. And I would agree. I think they should have added more of that.
Did anything surprise you?
So I was genuinely surprised at how hopeful it ended. And I knew this was going to be a very bleak and kind of grimy movie. And Batman generally is, but just the way the kind of the art, the point that it ended on with his character arc and the way his perspective on what he's doing changes, I thought was like really hopeful for a Batman movie.
Totally.
And in a way that I don't think we've seen since maybe Batman Begins. I think those movies end pretty dour.
100%.
Yeah. And so,
even like the movies that end on like a high mark, like when you think of The Dark Knight, when he's like riding up and like the music is swelling, like the music sounds hopeful, but he's literally like running from the cops because he's like, oh, I'm the bad guy now.
Yeah. He's falling on the bullet.
So totally. I definitely agree with you.
So yeah, that really surprised me. I loved it though. And I did look up how to pronounce his name because I didn't know, but the Barry Keoghan Joker tease.
Oh, okay.
It's Keoghan.
See, I did your thing where you listened to interviews.
Oh, you did?
And I got a Keoghan, so I just got the wrong one, I guess. I, for my entire life, have been saying Keegan.
Yeah, so, that's how I thought it was. I thought it was that way too.
Well,
but,
the Irish man, who knows?
It was funny because when they released the cast list, he was in it like from the beginning.
Oh, really?
But they had him listed as a police officer.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was like, okay, cool. Like he's going to be a police officer. That's awesome. I kind of made me think of like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character from Rises. I was like, is he going to be like a Robin type thing? That'd be kind of cool. But no, yeah, he's going to be the Joker. And I went back after watching the Batman and looked at some of his scenes from The Green Knight. And I gotta say, I think it's a good choice.
Yeah, and no, it's a great choice. Yeah. I mean, I think he can do that sort of unhinged thing. I question whether we need to do the Joker again personally, but if we're going to do it, may as well do it with someone that is like a really talented actor.
Yeah.
This movie is littered with people from Chernobyl.
Oh, that's right. I forgot he's in Chernobyl too. I think as far as like his take or Matt Reeves' take on the Joker, I know he'll deliver. And I actually think that Matt Reeves will practice restraint.
Yeah.
It's not going to be this like full blown thing. And I mean, these are huge galaxy brain guesses. I have no idea what they're going to do with this character. Right. But I trust him with it. And I think there is a subtlety to what he's doing with this movie, which I really like. Since like Zack Snyder's stuff was just, let's turn it up to 10.
Exactly. Yeah.
So other than, I guess the last thing that also surprised me was how funny this movie was.
It was really funny.
Yeah. There was like a lot of like really good humor in it. I mean, I think we'll go a little bit deeper on Colin Farrell later.
Yeah.
He's obviously a big source of all this humor. Jeffrey Wright as Gordon was really funny. And he was. It's just like this kind of attitude, like, what the hell is going on? And there was the scene where he's pretending to be mad at Batman behind the closed door while the entire police department like, and the way he's like shifting his head and like twisting his face, like he's yelling at him, but he's like, okay, you need to make an escape out this door.
I know. I love it.
Oh, it was so good.
I'm excited. During our report card section, I got some observations on old commissioner, or I guess he's not a commissioner, but Gordon. Cause I really loved that performance.
Were there any aspects of the film that fell short for you?
Yes, but only because they presented an option for me and then took it away from me. Something I really liked when they started to go down this road was like Thomas Wayne's actually kind of a bad guy. That's not something that gets explored much outside of like the Joker movie that they made. Because I mean, what? So we've now got 12 Batman movies. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but we've got 12 Batman movies where these characters who have had 5 minutes of screen time total are like angels, right? And like they are the driving force of hope and change in Batman's life. And if he has to grapple with a reality where, oh no, my dad was actually a dick, that sounds interesting to me. It sounds like a take that would, bring new ground into the franchise that hadn't really been explored before. So I was kind of disappointed when they did that, and then they were like, well, kinda, he made a mistake.
And I think so. My suspicion is, I believe Matt Reeves said that like part of the inspiration, he took a lot of inspiration from Long Halloween. Obviously, if you watch the Batman and read the Long Halloween, they're very different. And there's no way that you could make a comic or a Batman movie like you couldn't translate it 1-to-1 to screen. Like they're just like too insane. But he took elements from that. But then the other thing that he said he was taking elements from was Court of Owls. Which is like a Batman storyline that has to do with like this hidden kind of Illuminati society that is kind of responsible for all the horrible shit that goes on in Gotham. And I think those are supposed to be breadcrumbs for something that's coming up.
Interesting.
And I think that has a lot to do with, I've only kind of read the bullet points on Court of Owls. I really want to read the whole thing now. But I think that is kind of where they're going, because I think where they really dig into it is that when they go into the orphanage and there's that little presentation that plays. Right. And they mention the Waynes and the Arkhams as like these two families. And I think there's going to be some kind of tie-in through all that. But like, I agree with you. In every other iteration of Batman, Thomas Wayne has always been kind of a martyr. Like all we know about him is that he's rich and he got shot, and maybe we know some bullet points about his like philanthropy or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, the idea that Batman is made from bad money like is interesting.
Totally.
I wondered after we left the movie, and this kind of had to do one with the fact that the movie started late, and two, just that it was, I think probably 10:30, almost 11 when we left the theater. I was kind of tired, but I was like, was this movie too long? And I was like thinking about it because this is almost 3 hours.
Right.
And thinking about scene by scene in my head, I was like, I don't know. It made use of everything.
It did.
And that's kind of I don't subscribe to the idea that 3-hour movies are inherently bad because they're long. I think we've just been got too many times on 3-hour movies. But like, I watch the over 3-hour Irishman.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know what you want. Like, I like every scene in this movie, you know?
Yeah.
Save for maybe 2 seconds where Robert De Niro's kicking a guy where I'm like, okay, lost a little bit of his thunder. But I mean, like, so that was one thing that I was like kind of thinking about if I was like good with or not. And I'm just like, I'm cool with that. I want to watch it again.
Right.
The other little thing that kind of took me out of the movie just a tad was, I really liked the characterization of the Riddler and how they kind of brought that down to this world that Matt Reeves built. But there was this aspect of him that had to do with like the internet cult following. And then the kind of grand finale plan that he has that involves kind of like a mass shooting in like an arena full of people. And I was like, man, this is like a little too like on the nose and a little too real for our like current climate. Right. And I don't think that it's bad necessarily to explore those things. That was just the one thing where I'm like, ooh, we're kind of treading into like our actual lives now.
Right. Well, I mean, even just history of Batman, you know what I mean? Like that shooting happened during a Batman movie.
That's the other thing too, where it's like that. I mean, and that was a huge thing going into that last Joker movie that came out, which was like
a bit too much, honestly, I thought.
a bit too much. Yeah. And I'm not someone who is like, oh man, we need to be on high alert for every Batman movie, but definitely, like the history that mass shootings and Batman have, unfortunately. And again, I think the next time I watch it, since I already know it's coming, it's not going to bother me as much. Yeah. But it like really unsettled me. Like, I was like, oh, this feels so real.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that I found so interesting is, I mean, you never know with reshoots and stuff, but it's almost like this movie was almost somewhat prophetic. You know what I mean? In terms of like, if it was shot in 2019, 2020, like QAnon's not around then, and there were some real QAnon vibes from the Rid heads out there, the old Riddle heads, dude.
No, that's what that part was very prophetic,
right?
Yeah.
And I think one other thing, and this isn't something that I necessarily disliked because I liked the performance, but it seems like every comic movie or every movie trying to like make a statement about like crooked institutions has to have this now AOC type character. In Bella Real, it's just like, could this be any more on the nose that this is? And I thought she had a good performance, and I'm sure she'll make a great mayor.
They're even like, I don't even know what the movie's trying to say about a character like that, because there is a moment where she's like, I'm going to be a hero. And she kind of gets her ass kicked, right? Immediately. And so it's like, it's clear that she made the wrong choice. Right. And she's okay. But like, I think, I agree. There always has to be like that. And it wouldn't be as bad if it wasn't just like characterized the same way, or if they weren't using the same language with those characters over and over again. Right. That is interesting. So, I mean, we've seen the movie. How do you feel about the future of Batman at this point?
I feel good. There was a bit in this movie when and I guess this could be characterized as a complaint too, but there was a bit in the movie where they were kind of leading you down this path to think that like the Riddler was going to out Bruce Wayne as Batman. And I was almost wondering, like, is this a one-off? Cause like I had no idea if there were like sequels planned or anything. I mean, of course it's a Batman movie. They're going to try to milk it, but like, I was like, is this a one-off movie? Like, are they not going to do this again? Yeah. And I was excited by that, but I'm also excited, especially if they get, if they keep the same people. If Matt Reeves comes back, especially, I'll be excited for whatever they put out next.
Yeah. You need Matt Reeves in the writing rooms winning arguments with the studios, because nobody kills a Warner Brothers movie faster than Warner Brothers.
That's the truth.
Yeah. And I mean, they've already announced there's going to be an HBO spinoff. I don't know if it's a mini series or whatever, but it's going to be centered around the Penguin, which is awesome. I think they said that they're cooking up some other ideas for like mini series stuff, and that this will be a trilogy of movies that will have crossover potential. Personally, I hope he stays alone as long as possible.
I hope so too. Like, what, Aquaman's going to come in?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know they're getting ready to basically do their own multiverse thing with Flash.
Yeah.
Like, Flash is going to be the Doctor Strange of the DCE.
Right.
I don't know if they're leaking scripts to each other, and how DC and Marvel seem to be going after the same things at very similar times.
They're all just copying Spider-Verse, man.
Yeah,
Spider-Verse was there and they were best.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And so as long as we can keep him in a small arena with just Batman centric characters, I'll be happy. I don't necessarily want this Batman fighting a deity in space with the Green Lantern.
Right.
But all in all, love the movie.
Yeah, I did too. I would give it a solid thumbs up.
Solid thumbs up?
Solid thumbs up.
1 or 2?
Well, if I was given 2 thumbs up, I'd give it 2 thumbs up. I thought it was really fun. I'm planning on going to see it again in a few weeks with less clapping.
I know that. So that was the other thing that I wanted to ask you about the IMAX screening that we kind of glossed over, which is like, you do not like this.
I don't.
Celebratory kind of.
It's not celebratory.
Ruckus.
It's obligatory at this point. Like,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Like you're celebrating what? A character like saying a line that has been said 9 times in 9 different Batman movies. Like,
yeah.
We got to clap for I'm Vengeance. We got to clap when she walks in the room. Selena Kyle. We get a clap when the Batmobile starts up. The first clap that was worth it, I think. Because that was a cool moment when the Batmobile fires up. A clap when the Batmobile chase ends, which we didn't even mention. That scene fucking rips. That's a great scene.
I was like dancing around it until we get into that. But yeah.
So yeah, the clapping was a bit much.
Yeah, and the best one was at the when he breaks into the crime scene and uses the Batarang to cut the door open.
Right.
But you just see the Batarang, and then when he walks in, you realize it's the piece to his chest.
Right.
And he clicks it back into place, and you just hear one.
Yeah, just one person like, oh, no one wanted to join me.
I know. Someone was really excited for that. It was like, I hope he uses that.
Right.
As soon as they saw the concept for the suit, they're like, you better use it. And then as soon as they did it, they're like, yes.
Right. It's just the boy who clapped wolf. You know what I mean? Like, like I never know what a worthy moment is to clap for anymore, because I've just been when everything is worth clapping for, nothing is worth clapping for.
Yeah. And there's always the guy that wants to start it, Yeah. So it always starts with like a hoot.
Yeah.
And I think the first one was like, it's a Batman movie. So they set these shots up in very similar ways, but like someone's getting mugged. And then you hear like a footstep.
Right.
And then it pans to a dark alley. And then you hear a guy go, woo, because he knows that it's going to be the Batman entrance. And you don't even have time to like watch it unfold. Yeah, I agree. It needs to come from, I'm not opposed to it, but it does have to come from an authentic place. It can't be just like, oh, we did it. Here's another Batman.
Right. And I'm not opposed to it either. I want to be clear. If a movie gets claps and it earns those claps, I'm down for it. It's just like, when you're doing it like for each like on cue, like, all right, title card, first appearance, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, these aren't real. These are just, and that's what it comes with seeing a movie like at a quote unquote fan event. But it is definitely bothersome to me.
All right. So in order to dive deeper into this movie, we thought it would be fun to choose 10 different subjects that act as touchstones for all the Batman movies and assign grades to them. So we might see how this movie stacks up against previous installments. So this is the Batman report card. All right. Course number 1, social studies. How would you grade the portrayal of Gotham in this movie?
All right. So for this, I'm going to give it a C.
Okay.
The portrayal of Gotham is a C. I don't feel like personally it really brought anything new except for lots of rain. Like, there was more rain in this movie than any of the other movies. What about you?
I loved Gotham in this movie.
Okay.
And for a few reasons. One, I watched The Dark Knight a couple days before we watched Batman. And something that I realized is that Christopher Nolan's Gotham is really clean.
Mm-hmm.
even in Dark
It's
Knight.
just Chicago.
Yeah. And yeah, it's Chicago and
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh. And but it's like really clean. Like even when Bane takes over Gotham and the whole city is being run by criminals, it's still very clean.
Right.
Like they sweep the set before every shot. It's weird. This was a very dirty Gotham.
Yeah.
So it actually felt grimy and
Definitely.
gross. And I really liked that aspect of it. And then something that they haven't done since I think the Tim Burton Batmans, or maybe the Schumacher ones,
Mm-hmm.
when they were kind of more in a little bit of a campy thing. There's so many like kind of monumental locations in Gotham.
Yeah.
That are like littered throughout the comic books that never get used. And I love them so much. I think the probably most popular one is like the Ace chemical plant because it serves as like a Joker origin.
Exactly.
Place.
Yeah.
And so having the Iceberg Lounge in this, which is like kind of an iconic Batman staple, I loved. Like I was like, yes, we need this. And I hope it comes back in other iterations, but having a cool set that serves as like a layer for a villain is so, and him going back to the Iceberg Lounge over and over again.
I know.
And those two bouncers.
Yeah, the twins, man. I mean, that was a good comedic bit too.
Yeah, really good. So for that reason, though, I think the bar was a little bit low, at least in the last couple of decades for Gotham. I gave it a B+.
B+. All right. Now
Cool.
I feel like I was a little harsh. I'll do C+.
I get it. There was, you know what? I think what you're talking about, like this kind of like, it felt kind of small in that this whole movie is like in close-ups.
Yeah, it really
like,
is.
He uses really shallow depths of field. And I don't know if that was because of production restraints or what the deal was with that. I still think it looks really good, but it doesn't, it definitely doesn't have like the grandiosity of Christopher Nolan's Batman, where the beginning of every scene is like a helicopter shot of the city. Okay, course number 2, criminal justice. How would you grade the portrayal of Commissioner Gordon and the GCPD?
I'm going to give this an A. I'm going to give it an A because I just think like just the cop, like if you take Gordon out of it, the Batman and cop relationship is a source of like real intrigue. And it's very funny at times, especially with, I believe his name is Rodriguez.
Yeah.
And then when you add in Gordon, their relationship specifically, the Batman and Gordon relationship feels like so lived in. And I think that Jeffrey Wright makes so many choices in this movie that are just excellent. Yeah. For example, there are times where he's like exasperated by something Batman's doing and he's like, come on, man. Like, he refers to Batman as man. Yeah. And that just felt like there was this level of casualness that like only is there for someone you like know. Yeah. And that I loved that they that they had that sort of kind of lived in relationship.
Yeah, that they dialed that in so perfectly because you don't want to have an overdrawn scene where it's like Batman trying to convince Commissioner Gordon that he's a good guy. Right. Or trying to like forge that relationship. So we meet these characters in a place where that relationship is always forged, but there's still a couple of touch points where they're like growing together. Like, you know, you have a Batman movie, you got to have the bit where he disappears.
Exactly.
When Gordon's rambling on about something. And you see that when he does it in this one, it's the first time that it happens. Right. And I think that is one of those like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Moments, and it's so good. Yeah, I think this is like one of the better, I mean, I think Gary Oldman is like, if we're talking like traditional Commissioner Gordon's is like perfect. Yeah. But if we're trying to do something new with the character, if we're trying to maybe set some new ground and change the characterization, like they really nailed it. And I mean, I was excited for Jeffrey Wright. Anything he's in, I'm excited about. Yeah. He's like one of our great and still, I think, underrated actors. You'd think that Westworld would have given him that bump, right? You know, but I don't think he has yet. I really love his Gordon. And then I love the GCPD in this. It's more than The Dark Knight, which there is an aspect of The Dark Knight where there's a problem with corrupt policemen. And it doesn't really get told in the story. It just gets mentioned. Like there's a scene where Harvey Dent's talking to Commissioner Gordon and he's like, you've still got shitty dudes working for you. Yep. How do I know you're not a shitty dude or whatever? He's like, I work with what I've got. He's like, I can't just turn my back on the whole, and so it's kind of mentioned, but in this, you really feel the corruption. Yeah. You're in it. Like you're you look at every cop and the cop that you mentioned earlier, who's like, doesn't like Batman, but then he kind of watches him work and kind of develops a relationship with him. Every character, you're just like, is this guy one of the bad guys? Is he corrupt? Is he corrupt? And then in that scene where they bring Falcone out of the iceberg lounge and there's all those cops, there was a split second where I'm like, are they with Falcone or are they against him? And I just thought that was really well done. So yeah, for those reasons, I got to give Commissioner Gordon, the GCPD, an A. Okay, course number 3, physical education. How would you grade the fight scenes?
I'm going to give this A-.
Okay.
I think that, so like the Christopher Nolan movies, you've got like these very rigid movements shot like super close up and edited really quick and kind of gross. Like, and those fight scenes are kind of notorious for being poorly, staged.
Edited,
and then in the Snyder films, one of the really good aspects is like how brutal Batman fights. And I
actually have, and I'll let you continue, but I have to just place this right here. My controversial take is that the fight scene in Batman v Superman in the warehouse is the best Batman fight scene.
Oh, it's great
in all of Batman movies.
It's great. He kills a lot of people, though. That's the problem.
He kills a lot of people, and I think that is definitely. I mean,
whatever.
Yeah, that's not something that I personally like hold on to, and I think you can characterize Batman in many different ways. But it's funny because that movie is so bad that people don't even remember how good that scene
that scene is very good.
Yeah.
And that, and it's shot very wide, right? And so I think that Matt Reeves kind of blends the two and then just shoots everything kind of in silhouette. And I really liked it. Like I loved how wide everything was, show the action, show how they're actually fighting, but keep those rigid movements that Nolan has, because it's a very boxy suit. You know what I mean? Like nobody's got all freedom of movement in the bat suit. And so, I'll give that an A, because I thought that it kept what worked from Nolan. It brought, and I'm sure he wasn't like, all right, I'll take this and this, but from what I was seeing, it kept what was good from Nolan. It brought what was good from the Snyder, and then it kind of married them in this like silhouette noir way. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that he really perfected in this, which was, I think the Christopher Nolan, approach, and I wouldn't characterize Christopher Nolan as like an action, but not like a fighting director. I think his approach to it is like, light the set well, get our coverage, and let them do their thing.
Right.
And fine, but I think Matt Reeves was like, we could show the fight, how as it's happening, or we could play with other aspects of the scenario. Like there's that scene where it's completely pitch black and we only get glimpses of the fight through gunfire,
right?
Which was, I thought, really creative and actually very comic booky, where comic books are always playing with shadow. I think a little bit about the fight scene from Kill Bill in front of that big blue screen where they're just fighting in silhouettes, and there's just like way more creative ways to show that stuff.
Totally.
And, being a big Gareth Evans fan and everything that he's done in fight movies. And like, I love the long oneer with people that just rule at fighting, but it doesn't always need to be that either, you know? And so the only kind of nitpick that I have about the fighting was that it was a little sparse.
Yeah.
And I get it. They're laying a lot of groundwork. They did bring back the brutality of like him landing punches, and not only that, but punches being landed on him.
Yeah.
And we'll get into this a little bit later, but using his environment and the tools that he has in the fight too, I think is a big aspect of Batman. And sometimes that gets, I think about the Bane fight, and that's almost just all boxing.
Right.
The whole thing is just boxing. And that's kind of not Batman. I don't think Batman is just like, I'm going to level my strength against you and we'll see who comes out on top. Like, he's like, I'm going to use whatever resources I have to make sure that you can't hurt people.
Exactly.
So for those reasons, I gave it a B-.
All right.
Course number 4, advanced hospitality. How would you grade the portrayal of Alfred?
I'm going to give this one a C-.
Okay.
And this has, and it maybe portrayal, maybe if we're doing portrayal, that's unfair, but because I didn't think Andy Serkis was bad in the movie. I just felt that every scene that Andy Serkis was in the movie was a scene that I've seen in 3 other Batman movies.
Yes.
And so that was kind of my big issue, because, and I do think that Andy Serkis, I love Andy Serkis, big Andy Serkis head, but just like, how many times and how many actors am I going to see like play Alfred being worried about Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't stay out so late. You should socialize more. It's like, cool. This is like a really good actor that we're kind of wasting here. So yeah, C-.
Yeah, I think it felt a little bit closer to like what Zack Snyder was doing with Jeremy Irons.
Yeah.
He's a little younger, and he seems like a little bit more tactical. He's a little bit more man in the chair.
He definitely is.
And
he's not a normal Alfred. He's a cool Alfred.
He's a cool Alfred, and I really like Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
And I think that they could definitely do a lot with that character. And it's tough because I think Michael Caine kind of is the perfect traditional Alfred.
Yeah.
Like he really just nails it.
He did nail it pretty well.
I think maybe he was probably one of the best parts of The Dark Knight Rises was like him throughout that movie. And yeah, I liked the relationship between them in this. It did hit some of those beats where you're just like, yeah, like half of Alfred's characterization is just him trying to get Bruce laid,
Right.
And so, yeah, we don't need to necessarily go over all that. But even like in kind of the slower parts where, the hospital scene, I really liked those moments between them. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't think that character could really spread his wings in this movie, that it just had so much ground to lay.
Yeah.
I gave it a C+. But I remain optimistic about Alfred in the future.
Sure.
Movies. Yeah.
Sure.
Course number 5, feminist power dynamics.
Let's talk about them.
How would you grade the portrayal of Catwoman?
I'm going to go B+.
B+.
Yeah.
Okay.
B+. It worked for me. She's got like a sass to her, Zoe Kravitz in this movie. She is magnetic. And I don't know if that's just because of like, she's the child of two beautiful people. So she's a beautiful person, but like, I thought that she had this very, the inflection of her voice, the way that she spoke to Batman, it was really seductive in a way that I felt was true to that character's kind of representation in the past. She even she had a strut like a cat.
Yeah,
like the way that she walked was like a cat, and I loved it.
Yeah, I thought and that's definitely what you need to bring to that role. And Catwoman is kind of like famously the character that kind of makes Batman sweat.
Right.
For one reason or another. And I thought she did that really well. The characterization of Selena Kyle in this, I thought really like I said earlier, had a lot of depth. Maybe it leaves room for more. Like we don't get to learn everything about her, but like she actually has like this mini story arc. Mm-hmm. She actually cares about things. She's not just like this, this criminal who likes to rob people because she likes shiny things,
right?
And that oftentimes that can like Catwoman can kind of get reduced to that. And then she's like, okay, and then I'm going to make Batman, horny. And
right.
Then I'm going to bail. And
I mean, yeah, her motives for doing what she's doing through the whole movie are very little to do with Batman.
Yeah.
They're all to do with her friend. So,
yeah.
So I do like that she is not just like kind of an agent of whatever chaos or whatever, showing up in scenes and just, doing what you're saying.
Yeah. And this, and I think this is kind of the trap they fell into with the Anne Hathaway Catwoman, where I actually liked the way that she was playing Catwoman. But I think when it came down to do Catwoman shit, she wasn't really doing it. She was more of an accessory, and that's the problem. And we start to like head down that road in certain scenes, like when she's kind of doing the espionage thing with Batman in the club, and she's getting footage with her contact lenses.
Right.
And she starts to be kind of that accessory to Batman. But then there comes a point where she's like, I don't give a shit about what you're doing. Like I'm here to do what I'm going to do. And I liked that. I was really just like blown away by all of that. So I gave her an A.
Hell yeah.
And I do think that if they made a Catwoman movie with Zoe Kravitz, I would genuinely be more excited for that than a lot of the Marvel stuff that we're looking at.
Me too, especially if they include like a basketball game scene. That's what I'd be into. But one other thing about Zoe Kravitz is that like, or I guess about her portrayal of Catwoman is that she can fucking fight too.
Yeah,
like she was doing some crazy physical stuff. So that was great.
Course number 6, deviant behaviors. How would you grade this lineup of villains?
I'm gonna give this another B plus.
Cool.
Another B plus. It borders on A though. I'll be real, or A minus, I guess. It borders on A minus. I was really worried when I saw the runtime was 3 hours, and I saw that there were however many villains in this movie, and it did not do any of the stuff that I was worried about. I think that each of the villains played like a really key role in the movie without having the movie feel overstuffed. You know what I mean? Because they didn't all have a beginning, middle, and end to their arc.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is left open with the Penguin, I think purposefully. And I thought each of them really hit their mark really well. I thought Colin Farrell killed it. I thought the GOAT, John Turturro, killed it. I mean, pretty easy for him to put on some sunglasses and act as John Turturro, but it works.
Yeah. Like I was watching Falcone. Like he was actually the one that I was surprised by, like me being like way into, because I think he found that perfect balance of like, and I think this is a statement about the whole movie too, where he found this perfect balance between the campiness and the kind of groundedness that they're trying to go after. And the last time we saw this character, I think it was just from Batman Begins with Tom Wilkinson.
Yep.
And he was like intimidating. I love that scene between him and Christian Bale in the bar when he's like, I could just shoot you and there's cops in here and they wouldn't do anything. And that's how you kind of get the breadth of his power.
Exactly.
And I think they kind of take that essence of Falcone and make it a lot bigger in this to where you're like, man, he not only is he just like controlling everything, he might've had a hand in Bruce Wayne's parents' death and all this stuff. And the connection that he has to Selena Kyle and how that plays out. And man, John Turturro, you never think about it, but he's can be so intimidating and just creepy. And he's another one of those characters that like will just talk in kind of a low register, talk coolly. And then when he yells or when he gets less an outburst of anger, you feel it. Penguin, I have like nothing bad to say about. No. It's funny because he does this kind of, you described it as like a James Gandolfini.
Right. Yeah. It was if you put Tony Soprano in Gotham, that's where he ends up.
And he really does feel like that, where he like feels, and that's the whole point of this version of him is that he's kind of a second, and he's more of a, he's not the Don, he's the capo,
Exactly. Yeah.
And, the way that they characterize the Penguin as this guy who wants to be taken seriously, I think the way that Matt Reeves described it in an interview is like that he's like Fredo Corleone.
Oh, okay.
Where he wants to be the one in power, but no one takes him seriously. You hear people call him the Penguin, not a lot, but when you do, it's always like pointed to that he hates being called the Penguin.
Right.
And that he just wants to be taken seriously. And they even have that great shot of him. He's shackled and handcuffed, and they leave him shackled and handcuffed, and he chases after him, but he looks like he's waddling like a penguin. Dude. It is so funny, but it's crazy because under all of that makeup, it's so hard to recognize Colin Farrell. But then when he really dials in some of the emotional beats, you see Colin Farrell, like you can see it in his eyes.
In his eyes specifically, yes.
Yeah, he just did great. And then Paul Dano, we've already gone into him a lot, and
good stuff.
I think the Zodiac thing works. I think there's still like a lot of Riddler lore on the table that they could play with. I think I've always wanted a Riddler like funhouse. That's something they did really well in the games, where it's like he's trapped in an entire area, right? And you have to work your way through it,
solve it. Yeah.
And so I think there's definitely a lot of that still available on the table, but this is a character that shouldn't really work in this type of world. You need the Schumacher-ness to bring the Riddler to life. Right. Like you need Jim Carrey or someone doing that. And so I think the way they pulled it off is really well, and does leave a lot of room for the character. So I gave all the villains B-. Just, and I would say that the only reason I'm not pushing into A territory is because I think other than Falcone, just a lot of like loose ends and not really tied up. But I really liked the way that they did those. Okay, course number 7, diplomacy and seduction. How would you grade the portrayal of Bruce Wayne?
I give this a B.
B.
A B. He's not given a ton to do.
No,
Bruce Wayne.
it is a very, very Batman centric movie.
Yeah.
The kind of polar opposite of Dark Knight Rises, where it's like almost all Bruce Wayne.
Right.
And then you just get these little sprinkles of Batman.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of how I think like Bruce Wayne was portrayed, I thought it was good when he was on screen. You know, he's very quiet, didn't speak much, very observant. You know what I mean? Like at that funeral scene specifically, he's kind of just like looking around at everyone, wondering like, who the fuck is the killer? You know what I mean? And so I really liked kind of like the insular performance that was there.
This is like really a version of this character that we've never seen before. We got kind of shades of it in Batman Begins. I don't think it was like in this level of, you know, emo-ness.
Right.
But, you know, there is this kind of crisis that he goes through in Batman Begins where, you know, he thinks about assassinating people.
Right.
He lets kind of hate take over inside of him. But then he kind of shrugs that off pretty quickly.
Goes to the mountains.
Yeah. And he finds his peace at the monastery. But this version of Bruce Wayne, who is obviously just like tortured and like traumatized and just kind of a shell.
Right.
And, you know, we don't get a lot about him before that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get more as the series continues. But it's funny. I was, one of the things that I noted was like his reclusiveness and his kind of cynical attitude as the foundation for that character. And I really do love the him, you know, showing up for breakfast and putting the sunglasses on, because this is a guy who just doesn't come out in the daytime.
Exactly.
All of his energy is towards this. And the scene at the funeral when the cop recognized him and he's like, "Hey, Bruce Wayne." Like, everyone's like, he's here? Like, we haven't seen this guy in like years. Like this guy never comes outside. And so the kind of reclusive foundation, which I think is kind of resolved at the end. Like, I think and this is the thing that kind of gets me the most excited about Bruce Wayne, aside from Batman, is that I think we will get to Robert Pattinson being the Playboy billionaire.
Right.
And I think there will be a clear line where it's like, we have his inner monologue. We'll say diary Batman, you know, his inner voice. And then we'll have Batman, the superhero. And then we'll have Bruce Wayne. And it's almost like he'll have to put on a mask for each.
Right.
Not to get too galaxy brain with it, but I think, and I find it so interesting if he's like, okay, I'm this reclusive punk ass that's just like listening to Nirvana on repeat in my basement. Now I know if I'm taking an approach that's more humanitarian, more philanthropic, I need to play the part. And so him dealing with trying to be a public figure, like, sounds interesting to me.
Right.
And I really like that. And so, yeah, we don't have a lot of Bruce Wayne in this. And that's awesome. I think it's cool that they kind of held back on that. And it was like a very heavy Batman movie. But I think just as far as the potential goes, the excitement for where this character could go, I gave it an A.
All righty.
Okay. Course A, applied sciences. How would you grade the use of gadgets in this movie?
This really works for me. I'm going to give it an A.
Okay.
I really didn't, when I was seeing the promotional materials, the first trailer, first pictures, stuff like that, I didn't really vibe with the tech, the Batmobile, the bat suit, any of that sort of stuff. I thought it looked kind of cheap.
Yeah.
But that's actually like what I ended up really liking about it, is that it did feel like, oh, this is like accomplishable by this man. You know what I mean? This guy that has money. Yeah. And clearly has time. All of this stuff feels like you really could, create it.
Yeah.
And so when I saw it, I really worked. And I think as I'm watching the movie, the jawline just looks excellent in that cowl.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's half of why you cast someone as Batman. They better come strong with the jaw.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I like it does feel really grounded, and it does feel like he built this in his basement.
Right.
I think and actually this is kind of one of the problems I had with the Christopher Nolan movies is some of the tech is just like outrageous.
It's just tanks.
Yeah. And it's just, there's nothing kind of creative or exciting about it. There's like points in those movies where he uses a weapon and I don't know what it does.
Right.
Like it doesn't have any effect. And like there's I don't know if it's like supposed to be a flashbang or something, but when he's fighting with Bane and he like lights off this like
zipper thing.
Yeah, and it goes around in a circle and it doesn't do anything.
I think that's actually the magic he learned from Ra's al Ghul, though.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it like an escape thing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
But either way, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, where it's like, what was the point of this? But every little gadget had a purpose.
Yeah.
And you knew exactly what it was doing. And I really liked that. I think one of the best parts and one of the reasons why I think that Zack Snyder Batman scene is the best fight scene is the use of gadgets in a fight, where in the Zack Snyder scene comes up through the floor, immediately hits all the guns with like some disabling magnet.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's launching he's grabbing boxes with grapples and throwing them at people, and just like that use of tech, I really really like the Batman's first flight.
Oh yeah, with the like whatever that I don't even know what that did. His cape just turn into like a bubble, like
so it was a wingsuit, like like something you
like
see,
a squirrel suit type thing.
Something that you see people fly down mountains on.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's like a cape, but the cape has some like frame to it. So it's flexible, but if you floral it just right, it'll catch the wind. And that's usually kind of how Batman's cape works. But in this, when he jumps off that roof, he like unzips something and it's like a wingsuit.
Right.
And it's hilarious, that scene, because you could tell he's like never used it before. And he's like,
Batman's
oh shit.
First flight.
Yeah. And it was genuinely like I saw that. I remember that there's that shot of him like leaning off of the roof in the trailer. And so I was like, ooh, that's a cool shot. I didn't realize that like it was going to be the first time that he ever did that. And so when he like, I don't know what he's like, he says like, oh shit, or he says something where he's like nervous. He vocalizes his nerves, and it made me nervous like immediately.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. And then obviously we see how that ends, and he's clearly not quite there on the flying. But yeah, I really liked all of the tech. I think they're incorporating it in creative ways. I gave that a B+.
The one small touch on the cowl that I really love is the nose. You can like see the stitching of it, like it's stitched, and it's like an extra piece of leather that they like stitched on. Because these are all like perfectly molded helmets usually, and this one was very clearly. It's like, oh yeah, this dude just like handmade this mask.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. Course number 9, automotive repair. How would you grade the use of the Batmobile?
A+.
This is where we go off.
A+.
Literally perfected.
Yeah. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah. Not only like, I love the design of the Batmobile.
It's more stripped down.
Yeah. Like again, like it's like he modded out an old car.
Right.
And it doesn't have, it has like a dope like rocket booster on the back, but that's like about as high tech as it gets. And he does have other gadgets that he uses while he's in the Batmobile, but it does feel like this very first iteration of it. And yeah, that's really cool. But then the use of it in that chase scene with the penguin is
just excellent.
Incredible. Man.
Nobody loves to mount cameras on like objects quite like Matt Reeves. He'll just like mount on a mirror, on like the back of a car, on the side of a motorcycle. He'll just keep that camera still while it moves. I love it.
Yeah, it's so great. And I thought the way that chase scene was shot was perfect, in that you always knew what was going on. You always knew where everyone was in the traffic, especially when they go into like basically a traffic jam.
Yeah.
And you know where everyone is. And then the villain actually not just running, but actually trying to like cause obstacles and stuff was really great. And then the way it just like comes to a head is so fun. And this is where I would say go to an IMAX theater, because it is so awesome.
Right. Just like that blue cone, flame that like what you're saying with like the supercharger or whatever.
Yeah.
That's where that clap was like incredibly earned, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes a Batmobile scene is about the chase. It's not necessarily about what the Batmobile can do. It's like about the journey.
Right. So
yeah, A+. All right. Final course, intro to vigilante ethics. How would you rate the portrayal of Batman as a superhero in this movie?
I'm going to give him an A. Just a straight A. I thought that the dark brooding, you know what I mean, thing really worked. He has a good low register in his voice that's not cartoonish like Bale, but but not like
Thank you.
George Clooney's voice. You know, George Clooney just doing ER voice. That's something that the Snyder movie also did a good job of, was just like having a device that kind of did that. Anyway, he's not like towering like Affleck, but like the smaller, quieter performances, it really fits the subject matter here, I thought. And
I think it leaves room. Like Pattinson, like he put on some muscle, but it's still kind of like a thinner frame. I could almost see him like bulking up even more for like the next one. So it's like a good foundational, like young Bruce Wayne, kind of a scrawny dude. Detective Bats is best Bats. Like, I just love
good stuff.
And him and Gordon going on, you know, murder mysteries together.
Right.
I could just watch that. And it's like they can make a True Detective season where it's just Batman and Jim Gordon.
Gotham's a flat circle.
Yeah. And then the brooding kind of, everyone's kind of memeing the emo Batman thing. Right. And I love those memes, but also I think that this version of Batman is really great. But it's not even like my Batman is the edgy Batman. Like, I think they're going to get him out of this. Like, they're going to keep developing that character. And I don't think he's going to be the emo Batman forever, which is great because it doesn't feel like shtick. Like, it feels like part of the character and it feels earned.
Especially because at the end and you mentioned this earlier, but like it ends on like a hopeful note, and Batman kind of questioning the effectiveness of his presence, and kind of asking like, am I in some ways doing more harm than good? Is an interesting concept that we get to see here. And I really vibed with it.
Me too. Final thoughts on Batman. Underdog, kind of like inexperienced. Like, you could see that, especially in the first time that I kind of caught a glimpse of it was in the bar fight, or the first fight in the club, when he comes in, not the two bouncers, but when he gets into it and then he starts getting attacked and he starts fighting back. Like, he gets caught off guard a couple times, and he seems panicky. Like, he was like kind of like, you know, you throw a punch and miss, you're still wasting a ton of energy. Yeah. And I felt like that, like he was going like a little too hard, and it came from inexperience. He wasn't tempered. And I love superhero movies like that. And I think out of all of the new Spider-Man movies, the first one is still my favorite because I love Peter Parker not knowing what to do. Totally. And he gets his ass kicked that entire movie. Like, he even gets his ass kicked in the end. Like, the villain really defeats himself at Spider-Man.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So anytime that a superhero is, and I'm not even saying like an origin story, because I don't really like the origin story. So I feel like they just dialed this in perfect. Yeah. His inexperience. And so I think for the first time going into like a new Batman movie, I'm more excited for just more of Batman than the villains. Yeah. Like, I think a big part of a Batman movie is like, who's the villain going to be? And then who's going to play him? And, but I just want more of this Batman. I do too. And so I'm just, really excited for it. I got to give Batman an A. I got to give it an A as well, I think. Yeah. Yeah, really I was quite taken with it. Shout out to Matt Reeves for like the 10th time this podcast or this video. Best. I love it. Yeah, just keep on churning them out, man. Let's go. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. You can watch The Batman literally at any theater in Salt Lake. I'm sure I speak for both of us too when I say that this movie is greatly rewarded by an IMAX screen. Yeah. We have some stuff on the back burner, a deep dive into The Worst Person in the World coming shortly. And next week, we're going to be covering Pixar's newest assault on our emotions. And maybe catch up on some streaming and indie releases. I know that you had some movies you want to talk about. Maybe After Yang. Would love to talk about After Yang. Would love to talk about Fresh. Yeah, I'm Fresh. Yeah, I'm here for it. So try to see those movies ahead of the next episode. And any parting words? I'm vengeance.